our miserably failed response to COVID, the lies, the very obvious lies, the exposed lies told by people like Fauci and other government officials, that opened people's eyes. We want to get to the answers of chronic illness. We want to know what is causing this explosion in autism. This is horrific. We need to have the answers. We can't bury our head in the sand on this anymore. Bobby Kennedy is exactly the right person at the right time to get us those answers. Why are we so divided? It's because people are purposely dividing us. I'm asking people, don't let them do that. Focus on the good in people. You know, we don't have to stay in our corners all the time. Okay, we got a two-party system, but come on. We're human beings. We're decent people. We share the same goals. Let's work together on some of this stuff. We may have different ideas on certain things, but there's certainly things we can work on and fix problems. To me, that's what gave me hope with Bobby joining forces with Trump.
Senator Ron Johnson, I want to thank you for joining me on the MAHA podcast. MAHA, obviously, Make America Healthy Again, is this theme that seems to have swept the nation, and in many ways may have had some influence on the election of President Donald Trump.
It absolutely did have.
You think so?
Absolutely.
You've got a little bit of a different vantage point on what took place over the last couple of months that got us here. I thought would be interesting because you and I have obviously been involved in the hearings that you've put on, dealing with some of the things that MAHA deals with. Originally some of the COVID vaccine injuries, the doctors that lost their licenses during COVID for trying to use ivermectin or other, repurposed drugs. And then you got into food. You had the big food hearing just, was that? It was a month ago, 2 months ago?
End of September.
Wow, I've lost track of time. Time's flying by. But because of all that, I think you have this interesting vantage point. So let's talk about sort of that moment of inception where I think MAHA is born. Not really the first time he said it, but that moment Robert Kennedy Jr. called President Trump right after the assassination attempt. Were you aware of Bobby's desire to speak with Trump, or had there been any conversations with you and Bobby about Trump prior to that moment?
Well, Bobby called me up and really wanted to understand what his chances of confirmation would be were he to make that move. And quite honestly, I don't know whether he'd already talked to Trump before that or not. So I know when he did call me up, I said, well, Bobby, that'd be an answer to my prayers.
Like just like if I was to get a position with President Trump and he offers me something that I don't
what are the chances of confirmation?
Yeah.
Yeah, my evaluation was, well, if Trump's fully behind you and he wins and we have a majority in the Senate, my guess he'd be confirmed.
Yeah.
Okay. But again, I wasn't really thinking all the groups are going to be aligned against him. Guess I wasn't really thinking of how unanimously the Democrats are. I mean, they're just so hostile. I mean, the hostility against him was just palpable in both hearings, I think.
Yeah. Well, and this is going to probably broadcast after the hearings. So we're sitting today was the second day of hearings, just to give this a sort of sense of the time we're sitting in. Today was the HELP committee, which is the health committee hearing, and yesterday was the finance committee hearing. You were in finance committee yesterday. How did you think that went?
Well, again, the Democrats were hostile.
Yeah.
I don't think it didn't help them. They really looked like just raving lunatics in many cases.
Yeah.
Bobby was very calm, provided rational answers when they allowed him to answer the questions.
Right.
Which is not a good look. It's like let you ask a question, let the witness answer it. But I would dial it back though. I mean, if you really want to see where
let's go back.
Our miserably failed response to COVID, the lies, the very obvious lies, the exposed lies told by people like Fauci and other government officials, that opened people's eyes.
Yeah.
You combine that with podcasts. I remember when Bobby first started running for president, he said this is going to be the first presidential election decided not by legacy media, but by podcasts. Now, I thought that was, obviously that's what he needed because the legacy media was completely blocking him out.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's a little overstatement. I think in the end it ended up being true.
Yeah.
because of what he did joining forces with President Trump, but then also President Trump going on like Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
A longer format where people would be humanized. You're not the caricature that the legacy media is painting you, but like the American public can actually see a conversation.
Yeah.
And notice something that I've noticed about Trump. I've said this repeatedly. If you spend any amount of time with him, you cannot not like him.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, like anybody, he's got his pluses and minuses.
He's easy to not like when you just see little clips, and when you see him at a distance. But I agree.
But if you're on, I mean, he's first of all, he's got a good sense of humor.
He's funny.
He's smart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's very gracious.
Yeah.
So you cannot not like him, and him going on those podcasts, I think, humanized him to the point where he was dehumanized in the legacy media. Plus, joining forces with Bobby, that brought, I think, millions of people into the Trump camp that I don't think otherwise would have been there.
Yeah.
And certainly, if it wasn't determinative, it certainly helped him win 7 swing states and win the popular vote.
And the popular vote, and really give him the mandate, right? If it was tight, it was close, you didn't pull. I mean, he's carrying a power right now in this country, I think, for multiple reasons. I mean, to have lost an election, it's the second president ever to do this, to sort of skip, come back, and re-win back the position. Of course, people will probably till the end of time debate whether the election had any interference in it, the one that he lost. But, he's held this position that he was wronged on some level, whether even if it just came down to the Hunter Biden laptop and CIA agents,
that was massive election interference right there.
That was massive
and
right
I think
there.
that was itself determinative of that election.
I agree.
It was.
I agree. So it's anomalies like that you really can't account for, and the lawfare around it sort of come through all of that,
right?
And deliver a victory. So many people, on both sides. I was director of communications with Robert Kennedy through the campaign, but once the election happened, everyone kind of, both on Trump team that I've been around and on Kennedy's team, said the same thing, that it almost was like, there's a lot of discussion about God and some spiritual journey everyone's on, because they're like,
he's turned his head to look at my chart.
Your chart. You're literally a part of the miracle.
I'm a footnote in history from that standpoint. Yeah. But again, I said it during rallies. It was that coalition.
Yeah.
Of Trump and Kennedy and Elon Musk and Tulsi Gabbard that, people looked at that and go, this is really what we want. We want the partisanship to end. We want people coming together. And again, I gave Bobby and Trump so much credit for demonstrating not only how you solve a problem.
Yeah.
Set aside your differences, concentrate on an area of agreement, but in doing that, demonstrate that's how you heal and unify a divided nation. People from opposite sides of the political spectrum being able to come together for the good of the country. And then in the end, the issues Trump ran on were the issues the American people agreed with. We want a secure border. We want safety.
Right.
We really don't want biological males competing against our girls, sharing their bathrooms and the locker rooms. We don't want our currency devalued. We hate inflation. And we want to get to the answers of chronic illness. We want to know what is causing this explosion in autism.
Right.
This is horrific for a family. Long-term for a society, this will be unbelievably expensive. We need to have the answers. We can't bury our head in the sand on this anymore.
Yeah.
And that's, of course, what our federal health agencies, that's what Big Pharma, Big Food, all these big corporations. Again, I'm not opposed to big corporations.
Yeah.
I'm opposed when large corporations use the power they have to capture agencies, capture the narrative, capture medical journals, capture medical colleges to the disadvantage of their competitors and the disadvantage of the American public, their customers.
Yeah.
So I'm opposed to that. And that's really what government's supposed to do, but it doesn't do it when it's captured.
You pointed out in a brilliant, in probably half of your 5-minute speech yesterday, using up your 5 minutes to really discuss how disappointing it was, just this attack by one side of the room. To me, it was really maybe the biggest takeaway. And I just thought, I said this to several people in the press, sitting in that room, you just sat there and thought, do you not all realize you're on the same team? I mean, it really, and I think you captured that. But to watch like one side asking important questions, having some concerns, letting Bobby answer, but the other one just, and they all said this, most of them said the same thing. We agree that this is the sickest generation of children we've ever seen. It's outrageous that we have 60% autoimmune disease and obesity and diabetes, and it's horrible. And yes, the food dyes and the food program needs to be fixed. And yes, but on abortion, did you not say? I mean, it was like just trying to be divisive. What part of it, though, is why can't you all work together? Well, I mean, it's like fighting over a play on a football field, but in the end, this is the United States of America. We're losing the game.
Bobby joined the wrong team. Now he must be destroyed, not just defeated. Now we have to destroy the guy. Okay? Yeah, you said I don't. This is an Alfred Callie Means quote.
Yeah.
He said that they mentioned not polio.
Measles or hepatitis B.
They mentioned measles 25 times, never once diabetes,
right?
Or obesity. The things that Bobby's running on. The chronic illness. They weren't concerned about that,
right?
And they were concerned about defeating him. They're concerned about destroying him.
Yeah.
That is. It is grossly disappointing, and when you know the person on the hot seat and you see him being viciously attacked, I mean, it's pretty easy to, express some sympathy and try and convey to them. I mean, this is a good person.
Yeah.
Do you not realize the personal and political, sacrifice he's making here? The what he is.
Yeah.
Suffering from? I mean, do you not have a shred of human decency to have a little bit of sympathy for this guy?
He was running for your team, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
They used to all be my friends.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they're the political enemy and they must be destroyed. It's pretty sad when you have the enormous challenges facing this nation. I mean, $36 trillion in debt. Open borders. People don't feel safe. And you have this massive increase in chronic illness and things like autism that we have to get the answers to that. And up to this point, we haven't even been able to ask the questions.
Right.
Because if you do, you're considered a quack, you're anti-vax or whatever.
You're putting people's lives at risk. I mean, the whole thing is you're putting the country in danger.
What has happened with COVID is opened people's eyes and they realize those are legitimate questions. Yeah. And those are actually questions that we want answered. And that's been a sea change here. And that's what gives us such a great opportunity here. And that's why Bobby Kennedy is exactly the right person at the right time to get us those answers. I mean, as he said in response to my comments, I've spent a lifetime suing these agencies and these big businesses, which gives me a PhD in corporate capture.
Right.
I know how to do it. Uniquely qualified.
Yeah.
Particularly somebody who's written the books on this, all footnoted. I'm not sure there's anything ever been challenged in terms of the real Anthony Fauci book, right?
You would think, look, if he's
otherwise
wrong,
he'd have been sued. Yeah.
You would think so. I mean, that's
have.
defamation. The guy's name is right on the cover of the book. If there's something in here that's inaccurate, bring the lawsuit against him. And you're right. I mean, he's in there. He's got the receipts, if you will, and he certainly represents. I'm obviously a threat to a lot that runs everything. I want to ask you something. Going back a little bit, the last time, maybe it was the last time I interviewed you, or at least in the middle of COVID, you were saying and talking about vaccine injury that no one you're working with is listening. That you're this crazy person that's challenging COVID. They all think. I remember you saying they all think the vaccine is the greatest thing in the world. That congressional committee that put out the over 500 pages on the COVID pandemic and our handling of it was pretty damning. I mean, it left the vaccine alone. I think we have a sense why, but points out vaccine didn't stop transmission, points out that, and we didn't tell the truth about that, points out that masks, there was no science to be found, still isn't any, really reputable science to say that
let me stop you. We knew all those things.
We did know all those things.
Right.
But you and I knew all those things. So again, but do more people now know those things?
No, that as a result,
yes.
To me, that subcommittee was just one massive cover-up.
Yeah?
But I watched their first hearing. And the only thing missing was brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah.
So, no, there literally was nothing new. There's nothing that I learned in that committee report.
Social distancing.
So, but it was a congressional report, so it kind of put a seal of approval on the truth that we already knew anyway. So that was great. But again, they're saying the vax saved millions and millions of lives. So that, they're towing the company line right there.
Right.
I was highly disappointed in what the House subcommittee did on which is why now, as I'm chairman of the PRM subcommittee, we're going to get to the truth.
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. I look forward to that. So then you say we all knew that it had no effect on any of. So, but when I'm watching these hearings right now, there are at least Republicans who are like, I'm and Rand Paul actually had a pretty decent statement today, challenging, like saying we should be able to ask these questions.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay.
Yeah.
But they're really not questioning the COVID injection.
Yeah.
They're still looking at it's long COVID. It's not vaccine injury. It's long COVID.
Yeah.
Right? Now they are. I liked. I won't mention names, but one of the senators was definitely talking about. Don't we want to understand about autism?
Yeah.
1 in 10,000. Now I finally have the source in that. It was the 1970 studies. I was having a hard time finding that, but with Toby Rogers.
Got it.
From that study. So go from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 36.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's not because we've broadened the definition. We've actually narrowed the definition. It was expanding too fast, and so the government narrows the definition to try and reduce the number of cases of autism. And so that shows you how big a problem it truly is. So that's a good. Again, that's all because of the lies told during COVID has opened up the possibility of starting to ask these questions. Yeah. So it's given us that opportunity.
Yeah.
But no, we're still a long ways away from, members of Congress, the medical establishment being willing to admit that, that injection, that just might have caused an awful lot of harm here. And as a result, the COVID injection injured, I just can't call it a vaccine.
Yeah.
Those injured are still being gaslit. They're still out in the wilderness. But I think if Bobby gets confirmed, and I'm optimistic he will concentrate on first restoring integrity to science. That's the first thing we have to do. I mean, science has been corrupted, and it's been corrupted for decades. Okay, and Eisenhower warned us about that.
I know it's true.
You have the government pay. You have the government pay for science, for research. You're going to have a scientific and technological elite spring from that. They will drive public policy. That's called the corruption of science. You pay for science, you get the result you want, whether it's climate change, whether it's vaccines, whether it's a pharmaceutical drug, whether it's food products. I mean, that's what's happened. And so we have to return integrity to science. By the way, I want everybody at the table. I want the Paul Offits and all those guys.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
I want big
Offit,
agriculture. I want big food process. I want everybody arguing over the science, because that's what science is. Science is a adversarial process. It's a skeptical process.
Yeah, it's supposed to be full combat, right? I mean, we're coming at it.
It's rarely black and white.
Yeah,
and we have to recognize that, and you have to make judgment calls, and you have to have that debate. But we have not been allowed to have that debate.
When one of the things that I think makes this conversation. I would say in some ways I've been honest with you about that. I grew up a progressive liberal. Now I guess I sort of say I'm sort of libertarian, certainly conservative. And now I really do cherish this idea of, first of all, less government. I mean, now I get that. Didn't understand it. Didn't even know what that really meant. When Republicans say the nanny state, and I'm like, Jesus, this nanny state's out of control. It just locked us down. But you do get into this very interesting space about commerce. When we think about these large corporations and their businesses, something that there was an interaction between Bernie Sanders, ironically, and Robert Califf. Why didn't you take this dye out? What took so long on the red dye? And what's going on? And why is Kellogg's, as Vani Hari's, bringing Kellogg's to their knees, by the way, had a terrible quarter, which is really great. I don't know if it has anything to do, but certainly feels good to see them drop down a little bit. But why is that chemical there? And he said, because when they took it out, no one ate it, or it didn't sell as much. And when they made the bright colors with the chemicals, it did. So who are we to get in the way of their business? It's their right. This is a free market. The government shouldn't be injecting itself. And it does bring up a very complicated issue, which is, Republicans tend to be, I would say almost anti-regulation, but we're talking about now that the Republicans are talking about regulation. So is this a new space? Is it something I didn't understand? Was there a subtlety or a nuance here, or are we changing our perspective on it?
So first of all, I think our two-party system sort of forces people in their corners. And I think it's very unfortunate. But at the same time, the two-party system has worked pretty well. It's far from perfect, but it's worked pretty well. I mean, as Bobby found out, third-party candidates really don't have much of a chance. So,
well, because those two parties are really rigged it, but okay, yeah.
But again, it's a system that, I mean, you look at other countries where they have it's chaos.
It's chaos.
And,
I mean, the Knesset, like who's in, who's out.
Collapse, and again, so it's governing human beings is a difficult process.
True.
Okay, so that's why you want as little government as possible, and I think that's really the real fault line. Yeah, I'm highly skeptical of government, as our founders were. I think as government grows, our freedoms recede. But I realize we're not angels, and we need some measure of government. We certainly need to have government to defend our nation, to secure our borders. But you do need some regulations, or there are bad people. There are evil people, and they will take advantage. They will create monopolies and snuff out competition.
Yeah.
So you do need regulation, and it's complex. What is the right amount of regulation? But again, if you take a look at what we agree on, and that's what we really need to focus on. I come from the business world. You don't get very far if you're arguing all the time.
Right.
It's about finding areas of agreement. You got a product, I want to buy it. We agree on it. Now we can haggle over the price.
Yeah.
In politics, unfortunately, creating division works politically because you got a two-party system.
Yeah.
So that's why I was so hopeful, because that's what has to happen. You have to have people from opposite sides of the political spectrum coming together to do something so that more people realize, we don't have to stay in our corners all the time. Okay, we got a two-party system, but come on. We're human beings. We're decent people. We share the same goals. Let's work together on some of this stuff. We may have different ideas on certain things, but there's certainly things we can work on and fix problems. And that's, to me, that's what gave me hope with Bobby joining forces with Trump.
Yeah. When you look at as a Republican, looking at the Democrats, would you agree that the Democrats used to be sort of the party of like anti sort of corporate influence, or were certainly in this natural health space, like the more natural health, like, my body, my choice, let me make my choices here. I mean, I guess my question is, I feel like the Democrats just ceded over a huge constituency, which is this natural health, healthy living group, to the Republican Party. Well,
from my standpoint, Democrats have always been captured by the trial lawyers, at least in my lifetime.
Okay.
That was kind of the people they really supported. And of course, trial lawyers are always suing companies, so they're kind of anti-corporation.
Right.
Okay.
Which is what made Bobby such a superstar, by the way, right? Suing corporate interests.
Democrats
like
obviously were for the little people, but I always thought Republicans were too.
Yeah.
We all have compassion. We all want to help our fellow man. We have different ideas about it. We don't want Republicans conservative. By the way, I'm a Tea Party guy.
Okay. All right.
I'm not that fond of a lot of Republicans either.
All right.
But in general, conservatives, we want to give people equal opportunity. We don't want people to become dependent on government. It's not good. It's not good for them. It's not good for your kids. You don't want to depend them on you. You want them independent. Whereas Democrats are happy to continue to grow government, provide benefits, make people more dependent on them. And so what's happened is they've become so enamored with growing government, spending money we don't have, created massive inflation, hurting the very people they,
said they were
supposed to represent. They're destroying their lives. And so what Trump has done, he's really kind of made the Republican Party the party of the working men and women of this country. And hopefully we have more working men and women. That's a declining percentage. The participation in the workforce continues to decline. That's not a good thing.
Scary.
We want people working, okay? Because it's better for them. It gives them the ability to socialize. I mean, that's a big problem in our society right now with all the social apps, all the internet. People aren't interacting. You're not involved in your church as much as you used to. You're not getting involved with people in social settings. You're sitting on your computer and saying the nastiest things because you have that barrier. Things you would never think of saying to another human being standing 2 feet away from you, okay? But you say them on the internet. I see it all the time. I get my, actually it's kind of fun reading some comments after yesterday's hearing because I actually got some positive comments.
Yeah.
Normally it's just things I can't repeat on air. So it's like, come on, get a life.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's a strange realignment, but it's just a natural realignment. It's where Americans want to be. Mm-hmm. It's not that they're, the middle is rejecting one ideology versus the other. It's like we all kind of share the same ideology. We truly do. We want safety. We want security. We want opportunity. We want to be able to take care of our kids. We want to raise them the way we want to raise them. We don't want other people dictating how we raise our kids.
Mm-hmm.
These are values. The main goals in life, we all share that. So you really have to wonder, so why are we so divided? It's because people are purposely dividing us. I'm asking people, don't let them do that. Mm-hmm. Focus on the good in people. Focus on the goals, the values we all share. If we do that, this would be a whole lot better country, and we'd be a far more successful country.
One of the things that Robert Kennedy Jr. talks a lot about is like the revolving door. I mean, mm-hmm. it's one of the thoughts that you come out of industry, you go into a regulatory agency. If you build planes, you work for the FAA, you go back into Boeing or whatever, and we watch it happen in every single industry. And I actually have been contemplating this because I know even President Trump said, I kind of got, bulldozed by some bureaucracy. And you have to fill so many positions when you take this job as president. I was glancing and doing some work, just throw some names and ideas at Bobby Kennedy, but Bobby alone has 300 positions to fill, thousands, for President Trump to fill. And this is where this happens. Where are you going to go except to the industry, right? And, if I need someone that understands how drugs are made. So am I going to go with someone that's never worked for the drug company or never will work for the drug company again? I actually think, and as much as it did not come out in the nicest way, I thought Elizabeth Warren she had an interesting angle on what she said to Bobby. Which is hard to admit. She really rubs me the wrong way. But basically, she could have said it simply like this: you don't want a revolving door. You don't want people working for a regulatory agency and then working for pharma inside of 4 years. Will you not sue, or bring a lawsuit against a vaccine maker for 4 years? Since what you do in there, you could very easily make that more lucrative for yourself in the future. I think in some ways it was so combative, and she was being so sneaky about how she's getting to it. It might have rolled past, Bobby's fully, because you're under it there just trying to hold yourself down. But it is an interesting point. He has this vantage point from having brought lawsuits. He is going to go in from that perspective of knowing, as he said, I know where the bodies are buried. But if he makes way to fix this and clean this up, he could be setting up an advantage in the future. What do you think about that? When you think about how do we staff these positions, they got to know what they're talking about. It's complicated.
It is. It's very complicated. Now, no doubt about the revolving door is a problem. When you go from FDA commissioner, all of a sudden you're a board member of Pfizer.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that to have a good living. Okay, there are other places you can go. So I think particularly the top positions, there ought to be some limitations on that. Mm-hmm. Okay. The perfect example of capture and corruption, big corporations, in the pharmaceutical industry is the fact that Pfizer didn't have to go to court to try and prevent its trial data from seeing the public eye. The FDA did it for them.
Right.
So there's something wrong there. Okay, it has to be corrected. Exactly how to correct it, because you're exactly right. You do want to attract people from industry because you need them to know what's pulling off here, particularly as industry becomes more and more complex. Yeah. So you need people with knowledge, or the regulations are going to be screwed up, and you're going to harm industry. So it's not an easy proposition. You have to try and find people with integrity, and you have to have some measure of control in here in terms of the going back and forth. Right. I don't have the exact answer on it, but again, there's just some. You'd like to think somebody who's risen to the top of a federal agency, when they're done, or they're going to go into some other in Denver, something that's not a conflict of interest, just for their own personal
I
integrity.
wonder if we hand them a larger check as they walk out the door. Well, we're going to buy you for the next couple of years just to stay, so you don't just roll right in. Or
at the same time, people that are serving in some of these, they're not. Bobby, he's not doing this for the paycheck.
Clearly,
I'm not doing this for the paycheck. People are coming here wanting to serve.
But, it's a terrible paycheck, by the way. I mean, I looked at it. I looked at it. I was
in terms of what people talent can make on the outside. Yeah, that's right. You're not doing it for that reason.
Right.
And quite honestly, I think that's one of the. I think Bobby made the really good point. I didn't come here because I need a job, or I came here because we have a serious problem, and I've been advocating to try and solve this problem for decades, and I have an opportunity here, and it's going to put his heart and soul into that. That's exactly the kind of person you want to solve a problem.
Bobby's, so getting back to MAHA, let's say, God willing, in the next couple of days, I'm sure when this is aired, the world will know. We'll see where we're at, were we psychic or not, do we know where we're going? But let's just talk about the positions in general. He's got to fill 300 or maybe it's 250, somewhere in that range of positions that are in the head of FDA, CDC, NIH, and then on and beyond that. One of the attacks, honestly, on Bobby, even from his own side, is why did you pick that person, or why is this happening, or oh my God, Trump, is putting in his own chief of staff, and I want to ask you, so outside of corporation, we just talked about how do you avoid going to corporate talent. What about bureaucracy, though? I mean, also, Bobby's an outsider. I mean, sure, he's sued. There's a certain perspective he has, but coming into an institution like this and figuring out, just where's the paperwork going, who does what. I mean, he's going to need some level of insiders that already know how things move through these buildings, does he not?
Yeah. So I think a couple things. You need total transparency. And he said he's going to be radically transparent.
Yeah.
You need that. I mean, you need that in terms of what people's backgrounds are, filling these positions. You also need total at-will employment, so that people realize, new administration, if you're not an honest broker, if you're looking to try and sabotage the next administration, you're going to lose your job.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't have any protection in there because you have all these very political people.
Is it that way? Is it at will right now?
No, because you have all kinds of protections for the civil service. Okay. It's in theory supposed to be at will, but it's not.
Right.
So we need to move more to that at will employment.
Yeah.
And then I think I think most people serving in government are, pretty apolitical, and for whatever reason, with EPA, they certainly have probably that kind of bent. They want to protect the environment, so they want to go to work for EPA or whatever. Yeah. That's good. You want people interested in what they're doing. You just can't have partisan actors, and if you are a partisan actor, and if it's known you're a partisan actor, the other party gets in, you're going to lose your job, and you should be able to, be terminated. So again, I think just greater at-will employment, greater transparency in terms of where you came from, what's your background, where you're going to. I think that would go a long way. I mean, again, sunshine is a really good disinfectant.
Yeah. If you were President Trump, and you know Robert Kennedy Jr., and you're like, I want you to run HHS, do you think you would say, I need to put some people that have been here before, some of my people in here, or would you just say, Robert Kennedy Jr., just whoever you want here? I mean, how would you manage someone like Robert Kennedy Jr.?
I'd hope that a guy like Bobby Kennedy would come to me and kind of lay out, here are the people, here's the background. Do you have any problems with any of these people? Do you have suggestions? Again, it's an enormous task for all of them.
Yeah.
I'm a delegator. I'm sure Trump is too. It's like, I just have a plane that went down the Potomac.
Right.
Bobby,
I'm busy.
Cure chronic illness. Okay, do it well. That's your responsibility.
Right.
You hire, make some bad hires. We might have to fire some people. Okay, but we'll do that together. So again, that's just management 101. You want to be able to delegate. You're going to hire somebody, who's secretary. You're going to give him primarily the authority to hire the people he wants to surround him, so he can do the job. You don't want to hamstring him, but he also has to understand at the very end, you're the boss, and don't hire anybody that's going to undermine my overall objective. Okay,
right.
So again, that's just what you do managing large organizations. It's one of the problems with big government. It's such a massive thing. Nobody can really gain control over it. I mean, the permanent bureaucrats there, they look at any president, this too shall pass.
Right.
Or secretary. This too shall pass. I'll just keep my head down. Maybe won't try and sabotage it, but I'm going to slow walk this because I don't agree with that policy.
Yeah.
So that's a real problem. I mean, the initial Trump administration was, I think, severely sabotaged. Certainly they didn't help him on COVID. They certainly undermined him with the impeachments. People like Colonel Vindman. It's almost traitorous what he did. It's actually amazing how much Trump did get done when you had so much resistance within these agencies.
I'm sure you've made the recommendation, but to Bobby now, MAHA, he's got this movement, inside of government. Let's say he gets the job. Some of these questions: what are you going to do about Medicaid? What are you going to do about Medicare? What are you going to do about this? And like on and on. And are you a rubber stamp for President Trump? And all these questions. And it sounded like mostly he's like, look, I've been brought in to end the chronic disease epidemic. Should he just stay focused in that one lane? Because it seems to me, if he just achieved that thing, like I'm not gonna spend my time fixing Medicare and Medicaid. Sorry, I've watched you fail at that for my entire lifetime, so I'm not going to try to do that in the next 2 to 4 years. Because I say 2 because Trump's given him 2 years to show some improvement. Can we reverse this trend? Should he just be really very specific and come in and sort of stick to the one job? What would your advice be to him?
Well, when we did talk after the election, secretary or like a health czar. I gave him, it's his decision. I was kind of giving the plus and minuses both. If I would have been him, I might have done health czar because I could go through other agencies, that type of thing. Wouldn't have had the power, probably could have been dismissed. So again, I'm not exactly sure what the answer is on that. But one of the downsides of being secretary of HHS is you have Medicare, you've got Medicaid, and they're a mess. Okay?
Yeah.
They spend billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars a year. And, I know, one senator was really hammering about, what are you going to do with Medicaid? It's like, come on, this is a complex, broken system. This is not, we're not going to solve Medicaid. And I'm not even going to be able to give you a solution on Medicaid in a confirmation hearing. Yeah. My recommendation to Bobby is get one really good chief operating officer and let them do that.
Yeah. So go off, do that.
So in other words, he should concentrate on chronic illness. He needs to, from my standpoint, what I want him to do, restore integrity to science.
Yep.
You have so many billions of dollars that you make in grants. Those grants have corrupted science. Now use those grants to bring integrity back to it. Yeah.
I mean, if he did that, if he just, I always people say, well, how much is he going to be able to do? And one of the things that when I'm being interviewed, what's Robert Kennedy really going to be able to do inside of this giant bureaucracy, HHS? One of my things I said, well, look, red dye number 3, before he even stepped into the position, finally, has been banned. It's not like they just found out it was poisonous.
What took so long? Investigate that.
Right. What took so long? But what I think is interesting, and I said in a speech the other night to a large group of people, Bobby in many ways, he is a representation of the people. I think what you're seeing, FDA didn't just suddenly ban that because, Bobby's coming, look out. I feel like it's because the Vani Haris in the nation, though, are like all these moms are actually like asking about. The news companies are having to deal with it. The New York Times, whether they're trying to stand and support chemicals, this is on the chopping block. Mothers are pissed. Wait a minute, what? I'm getting different, Fruit Loops than they're getting in Europe. Theirs isn't toxic. Mine is. It's really resonating, but it's resonating because people are engaged. They're engaged right now in this process. With that engagement, it seems like, just simply delivering transparency, showing this country where they're at. But there's real fear. I think Cassidy, sort of expressed, will you state right now that you're not going to ask questions in this lane, especially around vaccines? There's a real concern with...
That sounds pretty scientific.
Yeah, right. It's... So
the good news of having the public pressure, we can hopefully then rely on the marketplace to solve the problems. So that what government does is provide the transparency. They provide as much integrity to science. They police that. I mean, peer review is a joke. Everybody's saying that's a gold.
Yeah,
No.
Yeah.
The reviewers themselves volunteer. Some have all kinds of awful motives. They've got their own opinion. They got their own research that they want to win, so they're going to tank a study that's the truth.
Right.
So no, it's peer review is not what people believe it is. So again, science has been corrupted. We need to point that out. It's actually probably going to be the first hearing I have as chairman of PSI, how science has been corrupted. Was it Marcia Angel, the head of she was one of the editors of the New England Journal of Medicine.
Okay, yeah.
Resigned in 2000. Took her about 10 years to start writing about why she did.
Yeah, so can't repeat the science. 50%.
I mean, you couldn't repeat the studies in the New England Journal of Medicine. This is what doctors rely on.
Yeah.
To treat us. That's a pretty scary thought. Okay, again, COVID has opened up people's eyes. So if Bobby can do that, restore integrity to science, if he can make things transparent, so that the public sees it, so the public demands. I don't want grain or corn that glyphosate. I always have
That's what you got right.
Glyphosate is sprayed on as a desiccant.
Right.
Now maybe as a pre-emergent weed killer, fine, but I mean, now that you found out that it desiccates the crop, it's a desiccant on the crop.
Like the last thing that touches it before you
on
grind
top
it
of the
up.
food, okay?
Right.
So we need to start testing food to how much of that is in there, and we actually have to have some studies to go, is any level safe, or what level would be safe? And then you want everybody on there, because I agree with Bobby. We don't want to lose farmers.
Well, you have a farming state in
Absolutely.
Wisconsin. Are farmers concerned with Robert Kennedy? Does it scare them a little bit?
Yeah.
What is their concern?
Well, again, if you start banning pesticides, I mean, I'm old enough that the dairy farms I was on, you'd have to they call them walking beans, pulling all the freaking weeds by hand. Okay.
They don't want to go back to that.
No, I don't blame them. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons we've gone from 50% plus of Americans working in agriculture to single digit.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to go back to 50%. So it has to be balanced. And what I've said in my last couple events, my final paragraph is, I marvel at how much knowledge mankind has accumulated over the millennia, and how rapidly we're adding that knowledge. But what we don't know vastly exceeds what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, the complexity of just the human body, the complexity of this marvel of creation.
Yeah.
Have some modesty, have some humility as we try and solve these problems. So you want everybody at the table. You want science to be adversarial. You do. You want people questioning it always.
Yeah.
And finding new answers, and finding what the not absolute truth, because you may never get to absolute truth, but as good a truth as possible.
Well, the best existing truth until something better comes along.
Yeah.
I mean, that's evolution. I mean, it really feels like in some of these conversations, are you saying block evolution, right? I mean, I think, there's old studies that say blah, blah, blah. We don't need to look at this. Bobby, tell us we don't need to look at this again. Shouldn't we be constantly revisiting? Shouldn't we revisit a drug that came out last year? I mean, we've had multiple opportunities. I mean, multiple times. OxyContin is the last great.
At a minimum, we should say who funded that study.
Right.
We start there.
That's a really good point, because that's something that funding. We have, it's shocking when people find out, wait a minute, they're doing their own safety trials. Pfizer does its own safety trials.
Don't necessarily make the data available.
Yeah, and then they only pick the trials that went the way they wanted, and we're not seeing the ones that didn't, which I think is huge. I think that's what Bobby's right. We need to see all your trials. You don't get to cherry pick. We need to see all the ones that got you here, how many went wrong. We need to be able to have scientists go, they didn't actually change anything between the one that went wrong and the one they got right. They just changed the study, protocol or whatever it is.
They're good enough at research to get the result they want.
But
I mean, people have to understand that about science. I mean, you can doctor your research. You can design a study to get the result you want.
Here's the problem, though. The reason they're doing their own trials is because should the government be paying for every cockamamie new drug that they're going to try and run? I mean, they run. My understanding is, what did I hear? Is it 1 out of 7 drugs, or 1 out of 3, 1 out of 7 drugs actually makes it through all of the trials? It can be $100 million to do a proper, double-blind trial nationwide or whatever. But I think people thought, I used to think the FDA was doing that. I thought taxpayer money was paying for that. But if it did, it'd be very expensive. It'd be very expensive to actually have our regulatory agencies, if we're going to objectively bring in scientists and do the science, is that in any way a way forward, or would it be too expensive for the government?
I think the government has to fund basic research because there's no profit incentive to do it elsewhere. So
right.
who's going to conduct research on generic drugs? Off-label use.
Right.
For it. So I would much rather redirect the funding to those types of applications. But this is where you need really independent panels, and you need them populated by people from different perspectives. It's not an easy task.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just not. What cancer should we really try and tackle right now? I mean,
yeah,
breast is always going to be popular, but we're this close to a cure for this kind of cancer.
Yeah.
Again, this also really confirms what I was saying earlier, that what we don't know vastly exceeds. So that's a problem. So if you want to find out what you don't know, where do you start? What is going to be the most fruitful? And you're not going to be perfect at that. You're going to be far from it. You're going to waste a lot of money going down all kinds of different rabbit holes. But that's why you want some of the smartest people, not conflicted, not corrupted themselves in terms of what their motives are in looking at this. But how do we advance basic human knowledge on these things and direct it to areas that we really do need to conquer? And right now, I think America's saying we do want to get to the answer of chronic illness. So there's some very obvious things we should look at that we haven't been able to look at in the past.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, with autism, we have to look at vaccines. We have to look at the schedule. We have to look at get them given multiple doses, the
Yeah, adjuvants. Yeah.
I have a hard time saying that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. I just, that interview I saw with Toby Rogers. So the test that said that aluminum was safe, 4 rabbits.
I know.
They lost the data on one. They killed the other 3, and the aluminum was in high concentrations. Okay, this is good to go.
Yeah, it's good to go.
Okay, and that's, I fear, I don't have knowledge, I have fear all those studies being cited saying it's all safe and effective. It's that kind of crap.
Yeah.
And so I want an honest broker in there, somebody that's a real skeptic, somebody who's really, I don't believe you, going in there and go, oh, okay, I guess you were telling me the truth.
Right.
But again, an honest broker, somebody who's highly skeptical, but doesn't have his or her own agenda.
Yeah.
To go in there but that'll probably have to be a panel of people, so that because nobody's pure.
Yeah.
Everybody's got motives, so that's why you need independent panels. To me, that's probably one of the biggest challenges that a guy like Bobby would have is appoint those independent panels, and try and get them as quite honestly, as adversarial as possible, but as cooperative as possible. People that, this is why you're coming here. We are trying to understand the truth as best as possible. And the only way you can do that is in a very adversarial process, but people that are cooperating in that process.
I kind of feel like Bobby's doing that in at least his choices for the CDC, FDA, NIH, CMS. I mean, you're bringing in Dr. Mehmet Oz. You're bringing in Dr. Marty Makary. These are not – you've had panels of scientists and doctors that have license review for saying COVID vaccine didn't work, COVID vaccine is dangerous, or I don't even believe in the childhood vaccine program. I really feel like a lot of people thought those were the doctors, and nothing wrong with them. In fact, thank you for being heroes and being outspoken. But I have to believe the Democrats and people that are against Bobby thought that's who he's going to put in these positions. He's going to railroad it and push this agenda. He actually has taken, I think, a very respectable choice, which is these are not only these are doctors that have been on television, some of them television doctors, supporting the vaccine, pushing vaccines through their entire careers. On the one hand, people that support Bobby are terrified. I just think, he's doing what he should be doing. I'm not trying to get people that totally agree with me. We're all going to look at the science together.
Well, you're aware of, in my events, I always invited the federal health agency heads, the heads of the drug companies.
No, I didn't know that. So you've been inviting them.
I always have. Invite them. They wouldn't even respond to the invitation. I don't think they thought it was sincere. It was. I mean, I would love, and now maybe I have to subpoena them, but I want to do it in a friendly manner. I want all the voice of the table. I want to hear the arguments.
Yes.
So that's what I've done as senator. I'll get bankers and I'll get credit union folks. Okay. you guys are always asking me to take sides.
Right. Have it out.
Give me the arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm ignorant. Okay, I don't know all these things. So give me your best shot, and I think that's exactly the kind of process we need.
Well, I hope that happens, and I think that it's.
By the way, that comment will be spliced
I'm sure. Yeah, but you know what? You've made it this far. It won't be the first, won't be the last. As we wrap this up, one of the things you said, I'm going to run again for this issue, for this this. Was that when you meant that it was like chronic illness?
No, it was the vaccine. It was the vaccine. COVID vaccine injuries.
COVID vaccine injuries.
No, I mean the chronic illness. That's that's I got to know Bobby.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this all, and really what was the real trigger for me was I listened to the interview of Tucker Carlson and Dr. Casey Means.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go. She explains it so beautifully.
Yeah.
So elegantly. Our bodies are basically, we produce energy. The sun produces the energy for the earth and produces crops and animals, and we convert that into energy. And the more efficient we do that, the healthier we are. When the efficiency of our metabolism breaks down, we become unhealthy. Mm-hmm. So we ought to focus on that. What could be screwing up our metabolism? Of course, the signs are diabetes, it's obesity, it's all this chronic illness. So let's focus on that. So again, we're gaining knowledge. We're aware of how the cell works. I mean, I'm not intimately. I mean, you try and turn this into layman terms, but that is really what got me interested in this, having my eyes opened that I can't necessarily trust pharmaceutical companies. I can't really trust the federal agencies that are supposed to regulate them. Well, I guess I really can't trust the regulators that are regulating our food processors either, okay? Yeah. Now, all that being said, our life expectancy is quite higher than it was. When they started Social Security, life expectancy was about 61 or 62, okay?
Yeah.
So we're doing better.
Once we dragged ourselves out of the coal mines and stopped walking through horse-drawn shit everywhere we go,
knocks it down. Again, we're not doing bad as a human culture, but I think we can do a whole lot better. And of course, the longer we live, the longer we do want to live. At least quality of life too. Mm-hmm. It's quality of life makes I'm almost 70 years old. That doesn't seem very old to me anymore.
Yeah,
30 years ago, man, you're at death's door. I hope I'm
getting closer and closer. I remember thinking, God, if I cross 70, I'll be stoked. Now I'm like, shit, that's just around the corner.
I know. So it's the new 50.
Okay. I'm looking forward to it.
So anyway, these are important issues to everybody.
No.
And we want the truth. We want answers to this. We deserve answers to it. They may not be black and white, but that's okay. Let's go forward searching for these answers together. It's what the American people want. And if we can do that, well, maybe we can solve some other problems too, using the exact same method. That's my hope.
I think you ran again. You didn't have the slogan yet, Make America Healthy Again, but you are one of the people that literally you said, I took this job because you don't want to see that carnage anymore. There's got to be answers to not injuring people. There's got to be a way we can protect ourselves from disease, not hurt people. It was really great to see you in these hearings. It's been great to watch all this taking place. God willing, when this is airing, people go, well, they were right. Robert Kennedy Jr. is HHS secretary, and we have a chance. I think there's a chance we can make change.
Let me thank you for everything you've done, and people like you. Bobby was right. These podcasts are revolutionary. This isn't. I'm not getting my information, my news from cable news where you get 3 or 5 minute segments here. Now you've got an hour or 2 hour long conversation here, and you can really delve into issues. Mm-hmm. And this is, again, there's too much now, but not enough. No. But you've done a fabulous job of finding people who have done research, that are honest brokers, that are educating the public. And you're educating me. I mean, I've learned so much. It was your podcast where I learned about the adjuvants being a real problem. Okay, so the attenuated or the dead virus isn't enough, so you got to juice your immune system. Right. And when you're doing that, well, you're not only becoming immune or sensitive to that.
The proteins in the vaccine, how about all the other proteins?
But everything else that are coming around here. So okay, that opened up my eyes. Okay, so that's just necessary. We're human beings. We all are there. We all don't know so much.
Yeah.
So it's about accumulating more information, and it's podcasts and podcasters like you that are giving us that vital information. So again, I have nothing but respect for you, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I look forward to more of your hearings. We're working on some of those. I'm going to keep sending you data and people, and you've just been magnificent in helping us, bring, the people that have been gaslit, this story that does exist, these people that have been injured. I keep saying, all we're doing is pointing out there's this group of people that aren't having a good reaction. No one's trying to take away, anything from somebody that's working. Plenty of people vaccinate, they're fine. Can we do some studies and look at the ones that aren't and figure out why they're not? Anyway, I have real hope. I had hope the first time I met you. I think we've come a long way. Hopefully, knock on wood, we keep moving in the right direction. Yep. But you're a huge part of it, and I want to thank you for all
so
that.
are you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, you take care.